that phrase I used the other day, force the millennium? I said that that the Antichrist is going to force the millennium on heathendom. It's this weird righteous people. Our religion is the best, and we're going to subjugate you other religions, and we're going to force the millennium on you. Well, this is really an imitation of the truth, because Jesus Christ is going to force the actual millennium on the earth. Going to force it on them. Going to show up physically, and he's going to judge the nations. And we have a geographical location of where he's going to do that. He's going to return to the Mount of Olives, and he's going to judge the nations in the valley of Jehoshaphat. All this is as literal as can be. Whether you believe it or not, it's true. So we have the two white horse riders, one in Revelation 6, one in the unveiling wherever it is. Where does the real Revelation 16? We'll get there. Don't worry about it. So the one is going to try to force the millennium by human means, by physical means, by human conquest. He's the great conquistador. And yet Jesus Christ is the actual conquistador, and he is going to force it as well. Because again, the millennium does not come by reformation, by gradual enlightenment. It doesn't. Now, you probably are worried about me a little bit this week because, Zender, you're really losing patience and you're irritated. Well, I'm very honest with you. And for last 21 years, I have been a champion of Israel. Not the false Israel, but the true Israel. And I believe they're scattered among every nation on the earth, and some of them don't even realize their national identity. And you probably heard maybe you didn't, when I did the book of Hebrews, I did a certain section of that dedicated to the lost 10 tribes of the house of Israel. If that topic interests you, go to my website, martinzender.com, go to the new Zender Sheridan show, look for my Hebrew series, and look for, I think it's a 7-part series on the lost 10 tribes of Israel. So I have been a champion of Israel. I love Israel because God loves them. Otherwise, I love the humanity because God loves humanity. Otherwise, I think human beings can be very irritating. And I sometimes champion the quote, "This world would be a wonderful place to live if it weren't for all the people." And yet I can't say that truly because God loves the people. What's my hair doing? I cannot fix it. I really do need to get a haircut. I understand that. So God loves Israel. God loves humanity. So I love humanity as well for that reason. Now, if you think we've been depressed before, if you think I was feeling low, a little irritated before, now we're getting to the black horse rider. So if you want to be depressed, this is it. The black horse rider is famine. Famine naturally follows war. And in this book, A. Enoch, in the book The Unveiling of Jesus Christ, I'm using this book as a guide, as a template, as we move forward in the unveiling. In these end time days, he had World War I, as he wrote this book, as his experience, most recent experience with war. It was World War I. He wrote this in the 30s, this article. So World War II had not broken out yet. And so World War I, there was a great famine followed World War I. And this generally happens after war with the conquered nations. And famine is the black horse rider. That's why I say there's not an actual rider on it, even though John C. is a rider. Been through that. Don't want to go through that again. Please don't make me do it. We're opening the third seal. First seal was the white horse rider. Second seal is red. Now we're in the third seal, black. And this is what Jesus has to say. Remember, we're not actually seeing this detailed in the unveiling of Jesus Christ, but we're seeing really more of it explained by Jesus himself when he's on earth, not in the scroll John wrote several years later. And there shall be famines and quakes in places. Famines. That's Matthew 24. Mark 13. And there will be quakes in places, and there will be famines and disturbances. These are the beginning of travails. Oh, God. The beginning of travails. The third seal, Luke 21. Besides, in places there will be great quakes and famines. So the quakes and the famines are side by side here. I don't understand the significance of that. I don't know why they are. Quakes and famines mentioned in the same context. Why would that be? I don't have an answer for you for that now. If I run across it, I will let you know. Quakes and famines. Why do I have to be thinking about these things? And yet, this is my job, and I'm spending myself for this. I am learning. I am glad to know more about God and His ways. I am excited that this stuff's coming up. But if you think this is bad, on Friday, I got to talk about the souls under the altar. At least that's on the agenda here. But I really don't want to talk about the souls under the altar. But in a way I do, like I said, because of the vengeance. There's something in me that wants vengeance. Sorry, I'm a human being. This grace stuff is great, as I talked to you yesterday, but there is a day coming where God is going to take vengeance upon His enemies. And I guess I'm more excited about that than what's going to happen tomorrow, because on the schedule tomorrow is the Green Horse Rider. This is rough. Okay, so we're going to talk about famine here. That is not having enough to eat. Let's understand the severity of famine as described here. And let me read it, so just so you know how beautiful this is. Not unveiling 6. What verse are we in here? We're in the 3rd seal, and this is starting with verse 5. And I perceived, and lo, a black horse, and he who is sitting on it has a pair of balances in his hand. And I hear, as it were, a voice in the midst of the 4 animals saying, a kenix of wheat, a denarius, and 3 kenix of barley, a denarius, and you should not be injuring the olive oil and the wine. Zender, what the heck is this talking about? It's talking about what food is going to cost. And you really don't need to understand any of the current currencies to try to figure out what food is costing during that time, during this time prophesied by the black horse rider. You need to measure it by its relation to a day's labor. And in Matthew 20, verses 9 through 11, Jesus Christ considered a denarius a day's wage. So this is our Rosetta Stone, if you will. This is the key to understanding how much a kenix of wheat is going to cost. And a kenix is an ancient measure. It's spelled Chenix, but it's pronounced kenix, and it's 1.5 pints by our standards. So a kenix was a day's ration for a slave, a day's food, a day's sustenance for a slave was a kenix. So now we have a relationship here. We see what a day's wage is, a denarius, and that's mentioned here. And we see that a kenix was the amount of food necessary to sustain a slave. I suppose if you were the fat landholder, you would eat a couple kenix. Maybe you'd have 3 kenix. Honey, bring me another kenix of wheat. And the poor slave only gets 1 kenix. So back in the day, forget back in the day for now. So in this day, we see that a man is going to have to work an entire day to get sustenance, meager sustenance, the sustenance that was necessary for a slave. That's all he's going to be able to do. 1 day's wage for 1 day's food. So all you're working for in this day, the inflation is so bad, or the deflation, whatever the hell it is. I don't understand economics, but all I know is that when there's a thing called inflation, your money's not worth much. So you're going to have to take a whole day's wage, a denarius, just to buy the amount of food. Today, that buys much more. You need to not only feed yourself, but your family. And you need to pay your rent, your electric bill. You're not going to be able to do any of that with 1 day's wage, because one day's wage is only going to buy sustenance for 1 person, and a slave's sustenance at that. And the usual price back in that day, John's day, for a kenix of wheat was 1/8 of a denarius. So there's another clue. 1/8 of a denarius, 1/8 of your day's wage went to your sustenance. So 7/8 of your wage, the majority of your wage, went to other stuff, feeding your family, your housing, buying the basic essentials of life, your candles, feeding your oxen, buying wine, celebrating the Passover, traveling, all this stuff. So you had money to do that, to spare. So the provisions are going to be in this coming day 8 times their usual amount. So if you just Imagine this. Take the price of gas and multiply it times 8. Let's say gas is now, I don't know. Like I haven't driven a car in 6 months, so I have no idea what gas is. And even if I did in Brazil, I'd be lost because it's in liters for one thing, and the currency is different. We're in the real. We're in real, the real. It's spelled R-E-A-L, but it's real, and the plural is reais. So I'm lost. I don't know what gas costs. Let's say it's $5. It's now $40. That's the drama here of the famine. That's the drama of gasoline. Now apply it to food. You get a dozen eggs, let's say, for $2. Now it's $16. Okay? You're paying $1 for a peach. Now you're paying $8. It's 8 times the normal amount. So there's nothing like this been seen. I don't think. This is the plague that's going to follow the World War III. The ultimate war is coming. This is the war spoken of by the Red Horse Rider, I believe. Jesus said wars and rumors of wars, but he's downplaying it big time. You know, and quakes in diverse places. It's going to level every building on the planet. The quake that is coming. We're going to get into that. But olive oil and wine, apparently, this is my only take on this, is that they're going to be preserved. This tells me the importance of wine and olive oil. I have both these things at my place here, our place here. We have wine and olive oil. And these are essentials for life, if you ask me. You're going to need wine. Look, this is what I think. Why preserve the wine and olive oil? I didn't write it. Do not harm the wine. Harm the wheat. You're going to be harming the wheat big time. You're going to be harming the grain. But you should not be injuring the olive oil and the wine. So in God's mercy, he's going to preserve olive oil, which is an essential fat to keep your brain operating and your joints loose so they don't crack, snap, crackle, and pop. And you're going to need wine to get through. And I think God's going to provide wine to help Israel get through this stuff, Center just relegated the entire tribulation, bringing in the kingdom. You call it stuff. But don't be injuring. Who could possibly be injuring? We're going to see as we go on here that there now are going to be celestial beings that are going to be wrecking things on earth. And there's going to be famine. There is going to be widespread famine just like there was in Egypt. What happened in Egypt? The land was injured. It was injured by locusts. It was injured by heat. It was injured by wind, by hail, whatever. It destroyed it. It was injured. And of course, we're going to see natural phenomena. It might be wind. It might be locusts. It might be this or that reason for the grain, the wheat, being so injured that there's not much of it, so that it costs you an entire day's wage just for a slave's meal. So this is unprecedented. It's unprecedented, and you're going to need to drink. You're going to drink your way through this if you're an Israelite, and you're going to have olive oil. I take this literally. Yeah, I do take it literally. The riders are figurative. The horses are figurative, but what they are, those things are literal. And what we are seeing here, following the Great World War III, is great famine. And the Antichrist, and I'm not clear again whether he's going to cause this stuff or rescue or both, is going to be a deliverer in this terrible day. But still, people are going to die. And we're going to get that good news tomorrow with the Green Horse Rider. Ooh.